This is not my normal garb, but it's a very special day. So I'm going to just take that off. Rotarians and guests, as I think you'll have gathered, tomorrow is World Polio Day. So it gives me particular pleasure to introduce not one, but two expert speakers on the subject of polio. First of all, Dr. Murray Verso, who already is known to many of us. He's a retired medical professional with experience in clinical practice, mentoring, and medical education. Murray is also a consummate Rotarian, past president of Rotary Williamstown Club, I think twice, Murray, I believe, past district governor, past district Rotary Foundation chair, currently End Polio Now coordinator for Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands, as you heard earlier, District Peace Fellowships Chair, and District Representative of the Council on Legislation. But Murray's great passion is seeing an end to polio globally. And as you will hear, his knowledge of the process is quite extraordinary. Secondly, we are fortunate to have with us Shirley Glance, someone who has lived experience of polio. And in fact, I understand there are others in the room who also have lived experience of polio. Our own member, Bruce Levitt, and his friend, Peter Wilcox. Welcome to you both. Returning to Shirley, she contracted polio at the age of 14 months. Bruce was telling me that he contracted it at 5 years, attending a party of youngsters, and there was somebody in the party who was a carrier, and 40 of these children ended up contracting polio. These days, Shirley suffers from post-polio syndrome, which inhibits her mobility. Her involvement within the polio community has been extensive. She is co-chair of the Bayside Polio Support Group and president of Post Polio Victoria Incorporated, whose chief aim is to advocate for the best possible care services for people with polio. Shirley is and always has been passionate about women's rights. In 2018, she was awarded the Order of Australia, OAM, for service to the community. So we'll hear shortly from Shirley, but first of all, I'd like to welcome Murray Verso to speak first. Right, I know it. Round the other way. Very far. My notes said Murray first, but we've agreed Shirley first.
Again, welcome and thank you for allowing me to be a speaker here today. And it's good to see some fellow polio survivors here. Peter Wilcox is actually co-chair with me at Base Support Group, and he's a member of Polio Victoria, and Bruce is also a member. So just to go back to my life, as a child to Australia and were challenged being a child with the disability. I then we lived in Carlton, where my brother, who was 6 years older than me, and my parents were working people, and they were struggling to cope with a child with a disability. I was wearing a brace, a caliper, which is what they were called in those days. I wore that until I was 14, and then I had an operation where it was rectified. The challenges as a child were great. Not being able to participate in sports, not being able to do lots of things, asking friends to help me at school, carrying books around. They were challenges. I never had a walker till I was in my 70s, which was only a couple of years ago, and I managed to get around. I'd had a very full life. was not easy. And I actually in the 50s, in the 70s, I was asked I would turn around to them and say, I'm not limping. Why are you walking funny? And I never acknowledged that I even had polio. I used to say it was a Boer War injury. The life's been challenging, and I'm the sort of person that picks myself up and dusts myself off. And my family always say to me, why how can you be so positive with all the things that have gone wrong with you? Not that's them talking to their aunt. That's okay. They can say what's gone wrong with you. But if someone said that to me when I was young, what's wrong with you? I didn't want to acknowledge that. We don't want to acknowledge that we are different. I don't look at myself in a mirror. I don't like looking at myself in a mirror because I worry about the way I look. When I look at myself, it's from the waist up. It might be a girly thing, I don't know, but I envy men because they can wear pants to cover their braces. I can't, and I couldn't, and I'm embarrassed, totally embarrassed about it. So what's motivated me to do some of the things that I've done in my life is that I have to prove to myself and to everyone around me that I can. And I think that's that Bruce and Peter will probably agree. And a lot of people with polio are A-type personalities. I haven't figured out what that means, but we are very, very controlling, very determined in what we want to do in our future, about our health and about the way we live. And that brings me to the point of the way people like myself and three of us here and others that are here today, we want to live a life just like everybody else. We have hopes and dreams just like everybody else. We have ambition. Some of us have bigger ambitions than others, but we push ourselves to achieve what we can in life. And I can say that about everybody here too, but when you've got a physical disability, it's a challenge. A point, I had to come through the kitchen today. I was told I didn't have to do the dishes, which is lovely, but it's accessibility. It's all those things that even I take for granted. I didn't think about how would I get up on the stage today. These are challenges that people face. And if we make it better for people with disability to have access, we make it better for everybody, because we have an aging population here in Australia and around the world. And if we do the right thing for people with disability, we do the right thing for everybody. And I think it's important to understand how important the work that Post Polio does, what Rotary does, and I commend you on your eradication program. We don't want to see people like myself in the future having these challenges. It's not easy. And in third world countries, I can't imagine what that would be like for them. You know, some of you may know a dear friend of ours is Ramesh Ferris, who tells a fantastic story about his disability. Well, fantastic. It's a terrible thing to say, but it is heart-wrenching. I mean, mine was bad enough getting up on here. His is really quite an emotional journey that he's had. I think it's important that you understand. I understand that Rotary is eradicating, and not that I'm asking Rotary to give us money to do what we need to do, but I want you to listen to what we do, to understand what we're fighting for, and to be the voice behind us, to support us, even if it's not through Rotary, as individuals, to support what we want to do. Many of you may not be aware, or some of you may, of the age discrimination with the NDIS of 65. Right? If you have a disability, like I have a disability, if you're over 65, you cannot get National Disability Insurance Scheme. The aged care system is not the best. It was better when NDIS, it was slightly better when NDIS was brought in. So that's why that was one of the reasons they probably thought that 65 would be okay, because the aged care system would be better. And that's another story, which we can talk. Peter's here, he can tell you all about the aged care system. And he's quite outspoken about it. So my life has been enriched with my disability. It has made me the person that I am and the person that I want to be for the future. And that's why I want to work towards eradicating and work with Rotary. I think it's important at your Rotary meetings when it's closer to end polio time that you have a polio person coming to talk to your members so that they understand, what are you raising money for? And a lot of you have been to overseas to see what it's like over there. But don't forget, we're here too. We're here and we're living it on a day-to-day basis. And it will make you understand the challenges that we have, that we face. I'm giving a time up now. So if there are any questions, we'll do it later. But I have a short 5-minute video that I would like to share with you that our Post Polio Victoria admitted to entered a competition for Focus on Ability. And you may ask why we would enter something like that when it's usually young people entering. But we wanted to share our story of 3 people living with the late effects of polio and what we've achieved and how important that is for life. We actually won the Nova Focus on Ability Award. We won first prize. And that was the most amazing experience. We didn't know before that we'd won. We went all the way to Sydney, 2 of us in our walk with our walkers. And it was quite an experience. And it was at the very end. I was ready to go home. I said to Robin, let's go. And she said, no, stay. And then it was announced. So it was an amazing effort from all of us. And that was quite daunting to produce something like that, made us think about our lives and what we'd gone through.
I was a 6-year-old. I was a fast runner. I liked hurdling and so on. And suddenly you can't run, you can't walk, and it's almost seems overnight.
For me, it meant at 3 that I was taken to the GP, and my mother was told she was neurotic and go away. There was nothing wrong with this little girl that couldn't sit and was screaming in agony and so on and so forth.
My mother, from the story that I was told, that I was walking up the corridor and then all of a sudden I couldn't walk anymore. So they went into panic and they called a neighbour and they rushed me to the Children's Hospital where I was diagnosed with polio.
Well, as soon as my mother got to, I guess, what was the emergency department and said, I think my daughter's got poliomyelitis, I was taken from her. And that's the last I remember of my mother for many, many months.
And because it was a virus, there was a lot of fear. And so we were sent off to Fairfield Infectious Diseases Hospital to be kept out of the way. It is a form of spinal cord injury in the end, but it's not done by trauma, but by this virus. And so depending where it attacks the spine, it depends on where you're weak. In my case, it was fairly low down, so it was my legs that were affected, and they were both paralysed.
I was in a thing called a double Thomas splint, which basically meant that I was in an piece of iron that tied me down on all 4 limbs.
Mum would wrap me all with the bandages at night, and that's how I slept.
It was a very traumatic experience. I still remember it because I was at home in bed, and two guys in white coats just came in and carried me out, screaming, out into the night, into an ambulance, and I woke up in a ward.
I used to get into serious trouble about not doing my exercises because we as polio survivors, probably the thing that was the most significant thing about the difference between us and the average kid of the 50s is that we were pushed.
I used to see Dame Jean McNamara, who was the doctor in Victoria for polio survivors. She used to tell my mother that not to mollycoddle your daughter not to wrap her up in cotton wool. She needs to get up and do things. She's actually a lazy child and she should be scrubbing the floors.
At about 16, I was reflecting on my life and realised that the health system was not perfect. I decided that I was going to become a nurse to fix it. So I had to take the calipers off, get the shoes back down to flat, finished my general nursing, became a midwife as well, and then went on and became a critical care nurse when critical care was being invented almost.
I studied law at Melbourne Uni. I did a combined law arts course. I majored in French. So I went for the postgrad. That eventually resulted in getting a French government scholarship to do a doctorate in Paris. Disability is not the end of the world as long as you get the right help, because you can still have a full life.
Despite the disability, it's given me the strength and the courage to get on with life. I readjust my life after every little episode, not every little, every episode of going backwards. I readjust how I need to live my life and I just move on. That's what I do. And that's what gives me the strength to keep going. The love and the care that my parents instilled in me and my brother in me has given me that strength to do what I'm doing and what I want to do for the community. That's what powers me on.
I don't see myself as different, and most of the people that love me don't see me as different either. They just know that's just Robin.
People assume that a disabled person has a lesser quality of life. In other words, they don't value life as much as another person would. But I can assure you it's not the case at all. We all have the same hopes and dreams and fears. We're all people in the end, and it doesn't matter whether one is disabled or not in that respect. We all have the same value.
Thank you. Thanks, Robin. The question I have is, in places like Afghanistan, how could we administer in so many difficult places the polio treatment in the first place? We occasionally read some quite significant horror stories in the way people who are walking around trying to deliver the polio vaccine are treated.
It is a challenge. Pakistan and Afghanistan. The Pakistani government is very committed to the cause, but there's a lot of misinformation in Pakistan. Nomadic populations make it really difficult to eliminate polio in that country. In fact, there were only 6 cases in Pakistan last year, but there's been 28 this year, so it's blown out. Populations become more mobile. Afghanistan, the Taliban have been very supportive of the polio program up until a month ago. And what happened a month ago was that the hardliners in the Taliban government said they didn't want women going door to door to vaccinate people. Only vaccinations can be done in mosques by men. That is a real concern. So there are challenges. That's why at the end of my remarks, I said we can achieve it, but there are challenges. And both the Pakistan and Afghanistani governments are being worked with by Rotary and UNICEF to try and, progress the cause. Rotary spent 18 million in Afghanistan last year and 28 million in Pakistan.
Fells, I think it is a remarkable return on investment. If you give $100 to the polio campaign, it's a tax deduction, so it hasn't cost you 100, but the great reward is you're able to inoculate at least 1,500 kids and make life possible for them. Where else can you get a good return on investment in 2 ways that's better than that?
Thank you both for that comment, Rosemary. Last question here.
Since that a case in Gaza.
Yeah, there was. So in Gaza, Gaza had an excellent immunisation rate of 99%. Hadn't had a case of polio for 25 years, but in July, several samples in their wastewater were found to be positive for the circulating vaccine-derived polio, and then in August, a 10-month-old child was discovered to have polio. There's a lovely video of the mother talking about this child, and she's quite angry that she wasn't able to have her child vaccinated. But to their credit, the Israeli military and Hamas have agreed to several ceasefires. And on the 1st of September, teams of vaccinators went in for 12 days and vaccinated something like 600,000 children in Gaza. And they went back last week for the second lot, and they're going back in November for the third lot. And there hasn't been any more cases in the wastewater or of clinical cases since that case in August.
Thank you.